Thank you for joining us for this episode of Frog Talk, an Auction Frogs podcast series all about events and fundraising in a post-2020 world. For more information on Auction Frogs and the services we offer, visit auctionfrogs.org today.
Hi, I'm Corey Michaels, and this is Frog Talk, your leap into fundraising. And we're talking this time around with one of our wonderful partners. She has the youth, the energy, and the proven track record already at her young age of making a lot of money for a lot of nonprofits. Anna Corrett is with us today, or Anna the Auctioneer, as most people know her as. Anna, how are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing wonderful. I'm glad I got a chance to be able to chat with you. So how has the last year been for you when everything first started in the early part of 2020? What were you thinking, and how did you evolve for your clients and for yourself moving into the pandemic?
Well, I would say going into 2020, I was so excited. I had a number of events that I wanted to do, and I already had hit that number for the year for bookings. I was going to be doing more traveling in 2020 than I'd ever done previously, and I was completely excited. I graduated from college in 2019, and when I came out of college, I wanted to be able to do auctions full time, and I was really, able to achieve that goal, and I was so excited. And January can be kind of a slow month for events, and so I didn't really have anything on the books in January, but I had a couple events in February. And I remember the very last weekend we were doing in-person events. I think it was that first or second weekend in March. I was so excited. I was going to be doing 2 events in one day, which was a first for me. I was going to be doing an afternoon luncheon and then an evening event. And I, from that weekend on, was pretty booked for the rest of that big spring season. And I was just so excited and so optimistic. And then that was the last in-person event I did and have done for about a year. And then we just got all those cancellations coming in. And at first it was people kind of rescheduling for the fall. And then it was, okay, maybe now we'll think of going virtual. And then it was, working with my team at Clem Bell Productions to figure out how to go virtual and what that would entail, and what we had to kind of learn new best practices as to how to advise clients. And it was a pretty big transition for sure.
Well, and what were the early things that you learned with the virtual events, things that you kind of had to change in your approach?
Well, so putting together a live event is very different than putting together a virtual event. When you're putting together an in-person event, you're putting together dinner, appetizers, caterers, entertainment, and it's a very different kind of run of show. Whereas when you're putting together a virtual event, it's like you're putting together a live TV show, and you can't have any dead air. And so you really have to make sure every minute is booked out of that amount of time. Because in an in-person event, if we're calculating the final totals to tell our guests, how much money we raise that night, I can just get up on stage and go, ladies and gentlemen, please enjoy your dessert while we finish calculating our final numbers. But you can't do that in a virtual event. So you have to make sure, it does not work like that. If there's dead air, people will turn off the TV, they'll turn off their computers, they'll stop watching. And so it's completely different. You have to make sure that every single second is booked out. You have to make sure that you have every minute of that, 1 hour, 2 hour program of content that you're giving to your guests.
With your clients, and, obviously this was a very scary time for nonprofits.
Right.
Revenue was down heading into the spring when revenue should have been up. And there was a lot of fear. There was a lot of unknown in our world in general, but just kind of getting that down to the nonprofit world, there was, I don't think it's overstating it to say it was getting close to kind of a panic on how do we continue to be able to get our funding. How did you approach that with your clients, with these nonprofits, with all of that fear and that unknown? I mean, they knew how to put on a gala, but now,
right, exactly.
how do we do this?
Right, exactly. And it was a big transition. It was kind of trying to get clients to focus on a different perspective of, your top priority is no longer going to be, making sure the dinner goes well and making sure that run of show goes smoothly. Your top priority is now going to be, making sure you have all this content booked out and you want to have videos and testimonials. And so it's a big switch. But one of the things that I tried to emphasize with clients is that there are new benefits to doing a virtual event. At a gala, you have, a limit of people that can be there. Maybe it's 200 people, maybe it's 500 people, but there's a little bit of a limit. But when you go virtual and when you're streaming, you have the option of having such a higher level of your audience. You're going to be inviting people that maybe have never been to your events before, and those are all potential new donors. And so you have this larger reach that you can, have. And that's one of the benefits of going virtual. And that's really what I tried to emphasize to clients was, it's going to look very different, but here's some potential benefits. You could be, potentially accessing a whole new group of donors for your organization.
Well, and we saw it with, organizations like Chimpanzee Sanctuary Northwest. We had donors from literally all over the world that were fans and wanted to give. They never would have been able to be there in person. It just wasn't going to happen, but it didn't mean they weren't passionate about the cause and wanting to help. National Hemophilia Society, same thing. But even on the local level, like little private schools, things they didn't even think about, former students, parents of students that had moved out there, alumni that still were passionate about their school, and now they were able to still be a part of it. And so I think that's one of the biggest things that we take away from this last year and this new virtual component that I think is always going to be, to some degree, a part of fundraising moving forward because of that.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, the first virtual event I did in kind of the new 2020 was for a school, for a private school, a public school foundation. And we had, a lot of people's grandparents who normally would never have come to the gala, who live in Oregon and Colorado and Virginia. Like, they were tuning in and they were donating to support their grandkids. And that's, a whole group of donors that school would have normally not had.
Yeah, it's been a scary time, but also I think a very exciting time in the world of fundraising as well. Now, for you moving forward and getting into this new year where now we have new challenges because, those same organizations are going, well, we kind of want to be back in person too, but we kind of want to do this. Or maybe it was one of the nonprofits that just kind of sat back and said, no, we're going to watch what everyone else does this year. Well, now they can't watch anymore. The worst thing they can do at this moment is do nothing. They've got to move forward. So what would you tell them if a new nonprofit, maybe they sat out 2020 and now is going, okay, Anna, what do we do?
Well, I had a lot of clients in 2020 that decided that, this was probably just going to be a 2020 thing and that they could go back to in-person in 2021. And now that we're in 2021, we're maybe seeing that that's not a possibility. And, now we have about a year worth of experience with virtual events and I've learned best practices and as a community of fundraisers, we've all learned best practices and we're very equipped to consult with clients on a virtual event that would look good for them. And now that it's been a year, there are so many more options for virtual events that I maybe hadn't thought about in March of 2020. Now that I've had about a year under my belt, I'm able to say there are so many potential things we could do. We've had clients that have gotten so creative with trivia nights, bingo nights, social media walls, really making it interactive so it doesn't just seem like a 1 hour telethon where I'm just up there talking for an hour, like really finding a way to interact with their guests and make it something that their donor base will really love, as opposed to just kind of, pass over. And I would say, 2021 is a really good year to be doing a virtual event, and you can learn some of those new practices of virtual events that I do think will carry over into in-person events once we can do in-person events again. For example, we've had a lot of success with virtual silent auction items. That's one of the things that Auction Frogs does in their software, is they put all those auction items online, and you can open bidding, 3-4 days in advance of your event, or even longer than that. And that really drives up the bids. And like that practice is something that you could absolutely do to in-person events. You could open that bidding up a week in advance, so that by the time you get to your in-person event and you're at the silent auction and you can actually see the items, they pretty much all have bids on them at that point. It gets you even more excited about it, and it drives up those prices, which is always good for the nonprofit.
Absolutely. Anna, how can people follow you, contact you, find out more best practices for virtual events heading into 2021?
Well, I have a website, annacouvrette.com. Couvrette is spelled Couv as a Victor, Rette. And then my social media is all Anna the Auctioneer. So that's Instagram, Facebook. Yep.
Well, Anna, have a wonderful day, and we'll see each other soon.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Frog Talk, an Auction Frogs podcast series all about events and fundraising in a post-2020 world. For more information on Auction Frogs and the services we offer, visit auctionfrogs.org today. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Frog Talk, an Auction Frogs podcast series all about events and fundraising in a post-2020 world. For more information on Auction Frogs and the services we offer, visit auctionfrogs.org today.